Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Passion boiled over in the rich mansion of the cottage village. The landlady, Nina, was loudly indignant. Tony, at least influence Alex. What kind of a show? What matchmakers? I already feel sick. I can imagine these village idiots. And I do not want to see them in my house. Has our son gone mad? Well, tell me, where did he dig up this scarecrow from the village? No mind, no higher education, no money. What did she buy him with? Anthony tried to calm the raging wife. He was terribly tired at work, his head was pounding, and he just couldn't stand the unbearable yelling. Girl, don't shout like that. I beg you, my head is about to burst. I've had my head blown off in corporate as it is, and now you're starting to panic. Alex is young, he sees a pretty girl and falls in love. What's the big deal? He's used to everything ready-made, everything on a silver platter, so he gets weird. He doesn't think about the future at all. What are you so worried about? No one's going to invite matchmakers to the house. You shouldn't invite all sorts of jerks to a decent house. We'll do the trick. We'll book the best restaurant in town, and we'll embarrass these suckers. They'll run away on their own. I'll take care of it. Alex isn't stupid. He'll change his mind when he sees his future in-laws. So come on, feed me dinner. What did the cook make today? At that very time, a happy Nancy, the village bride, called her parents to tell her super important news. Mommy, hi. How are you and Daddy? Are you okay? Well, my fiance's parents are inviting you over this weekend. They want to meet you. I don't know when and where. I'll tell you later. You'll come, right? The excited woman began to ask about everything. Wow, that's great. Me and my dad will be there for sure. It's good that they're calling. It means that the guy is really serious. It's time to get married. The daughter laughed. You're right, Mom. Alex and I are going to get married. But first we need to meet the families as we should. So don't forget to be sure. It's very important to me. Then she exhaled and gently kissed her fiancé. Phoo, I said. I invited him, and I'm still shaking. I think my mom has no idea yet. I can't imagine what will happen when we tell everyone at a family reunion that I'm pregnant. They'll probably scold me. Alex didn't answer very confidently. Yeah, I can't imagine. My mother's going to scream for sure, but there's no other way. It's been 3 months. How much longer can it take? I'll explain to them that I love you very much, and I hope they'll understand and we'll get married. Although, to tell you the truth, I can't even imagine myself as a father yet. It's a little early. How can we be like this? Nancy was hurt by these words, and she said with resentment, Why, don't you love me? And if it wasn't for the pregnancy, you wouldn't have gotten married at all. That's the way it is. So maybe there's no need to call your parents then. Alex hurriedly apologized, clutching his bride to him. Don't sulk, Nancy. It was just something I said without thinking. I love you, you know that. I didn't expect the pregnancy to happen. But as it happened, well, we'll bring it up. Nancy almost jumped on the spot. And you think I expected it? When I saw 2 lines on the test, I almost fainted. Actually, it's not all my fault. But I already love the baby. He's ours, yours and mine. And you make it sound like a misunderstanding. Alex became ashamed of his words, and he began to kiss and soothe his bride. That's it, kitten, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. This is our baby, and I love him too. It's gonna be okay, we're gonna get married. Now go to bed, we're here. Kisses, I'll call you tomorrow. Don't worry, you can't be nervous. The girl got out of the car, waved to her fiancé, and went back to her dormitory. He really loved Nancy a lot, but the news of her pregnancy came as a shock to him. Alex did not want to plunge into the household chores, change the baby's diapers, feed, and not sleep nights. But would that be life? All his youth would pass in diapers and raspy pants. These thoughts pressed on the guy. He was frankly not ready for such changes in his carefree life. Nancy, too, could not sleep for a long time, despite the very late hour. She kept spinning, worrying, and remembering her past. Nancy grew up in an ordinary country family. Her father, Robert, was a harvester, and her mother, Wendy, a milkmaid. They gave birth to Nancy when they were both in their 30s. God had not given them any earlier. That's why they didn't want their little girl. By country standards, the family lived quite well, kept a farm, a large vegetable garden, and even an apiary. They lived amicably, toiled from the early morning till the night, and if they had a rest, then to their glory. Nancy grew up an intelligent and clever girl. She studied well, read a lot, and was fond of medicine. After high school, it was her father who insisted that she go to the city and enroll in medical school. Nancy was afraid to go alone to the capital. She was used to a quiet, measured village life, freedom, but her father insisted. "You have to understand, daughter, I want what's best for you. What's your future here? Either a milkmaid or a pig farmer. There are no other options. You could get a job in a hospital, or at least in our paramedic's office. William's old, he'll be retiring soon. He'll have a young replacement. Don't lose your head, or you'll be beckoned by the city's big man. You're so handsome and good-looking, aren't you? I want everything to be just like people. First the marriage, then the wedding, and then you can do whatever you want." My mother wept and baked pies for the trip, packed an unbearable bag, and my father personally took his daughter to the capital, put her in a dormitory, made sure there were no rowdy neighbors, waited for the exam results, and only when he was sure that Nancy was accepted, he left with a clear conscience. He kissed her goodbye and touched her naughty bangs. "That's it, my good man. From here on you do your own spin. We left you money with your mother, provisions too. Try your best. Study well, don't forget about us, come back during the vacations." Nancy even cried and hung on her father's neck, just as she had when she was a child. "Bye, Daddy, I'm going to miss you so much. Don't forget to take my dog Rex for a walk." Nancy quickly got used to the group, got involved in the learning process, and soon became the best in her class. In addition, it turned out that she had a very light hand, and in practice in the department, all the patients ran to her for injections. Many classmates looked at the beautiful girl and even tried to flirt with her, but Nancy's heart never gave a tick, and she just ignored them. But at the graduation party, everything changed. The deputy and businessman Anthony and his son, also a budding businessman, Alex, came to congratulate the future medics. They were patrons of the arts and sponsored the school and the city hospital. The men from the stage warmly congratulated the graduates and personally presented certificates of merit to those who had distinguished themselves. Nancy, just then, had a red diploma and was sitting in the front row. When her name was called, the girl's heart sank, and she went to the stage on unsteady legs. A young, athletic guy in a matching suit, and Ty shook her hand, handed her a diploma, and praised her. "Good job. Way to go." And he looked at her in such a way that everything inside her turned over and froze. When the party was over and Nancy and her group were going to the cafe, she suddenly saw in the doorway the very handsome man who had congratulated her. He pulled the girl aside and said softly, "Hello again. My name is Alex. Can I meet you? To be honest, I really like you. I'd like to invite you to a movie, if you don't mind." Of course, Nancy did not mind. She was just happy, and immediately, from memory, she dictated her number, and so they said goodbye. Already the holidays were over, and the girl managed to get a job in the therapeutic department as a nurse. But Alex still did not call. She knew in her mind, who am I to him? A passing acquaintance. We only saw each other for 2 minutes. He had forgotten about me a long time ago. And I, like a fool, was still waiting. And yet, she flinched every time the phone rang and looked at the display almost every minute, afraid to miss the most important call of her life. Finally, after 3 weeks, Alex called. "Greetings to the most adorable alumna. It's Alex. Remember him, or am I already lost in the string of admirers?" Nancy, trying to remain calm and not to give away her exuberant joy, deliberately, unhurriedly replied, "Alex, of course I remember. But you, I think, have completely forgotten me, haven't you?" The guy laughed into the two. "I haven't forgotten you for a minute. I've just been on a business trip, getting into my father's business, and it's been a little difficult so far. So my offer to go to the movies still stands. There's a new, interesting horror movie playing tonight. Shall we go?" Nancy almost jumped for joy and replied, I don't mind because I've studied for 3 years and I've never been to the movies. Just don't be too long, I have a shift tomorrow. Okay. Alex was happy too, you could hear it in his voice, and he said firmly, "Then I'll see you at 8 near the movie theater. I'll be waiting." Alex was getting nervous, kept looking at his watch. The session was about to start, and Nancy was still not there. He was rubbing the gorgeous bouquet of lilies in his hands, and he couldn't find his place. Isn't she coming? What had happened? Did I hurt her in any way? Finally, a girl ran out from around the corner, out of breath. She was in a hurry, her cheeks flushed and her hair a little disheveled, and her light summer dress fluttered in the wind and lifted up, exposing her slender, perfect legs. The guy just stunned and admired her, so beautiful Nancy was at this moment. The girl began to apologize. "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting so long. I got on the wrong bus, and I got a little confused, and I barely made it. I've never been in this neighborhood." Alex handed her the bouquet and said, "I'm the idiot. I should have taken you out of the house. Next time I will, so I'm the one who's sorry. You look stunning. Come on, let's go, we're already late. What do you want? Popcorn." The movie was scary, but very exciting. Nancy groaned, sometimes even shuddered, and by inertia pressed herself closer to Alex in particularly frightening moments. The boy held the girl's hand and was crying. He wished that the session had never ended, and so they sat side by side. From that night on, the couple began to meet regularly, both of them madly in love. You could tell by their burning eyes and wandering smiles. They walked and talked a lot. Nancy told funny stories from her village life. How she had once been hit by a cow, how she had begged her father to let her drive a combine, and how she had learned to swim and almost drowned. And Alex gushingly talked about his trips abroad, other countries, and promised that soon they would go there together and bask in a seaside resort and drink delicious cocktails. He couldn't wait to enjoy Nancy, but she was unapproachable and wouldn't do it. Then Alex decided to cheat. He invited her to visit, knowing that her parents had gone to an acquaintance for a sleepover. Nancy didn't suspect anything and came. The guy set the table, poured champagne in glasses, and played a romantic love movie. The girl drank. The champagne quickly hit her head. She melted. Then they ate sweet, fragrant strawberries and cake, kissed passionately, like the characters in the movie, and she couldn't resist. Their first intimacy was unique. Alex was gentle, affectionate. He whispered such words to her that made her fly to heaven. He told her that he loved her, that they would be together forever. And Nancy believed it, because she felt the same way herself. She was sure that this was not a passing romance, but the most real, deep, and sincere love for life. It couldn't be any other way. And after a while, Nancy began to feel strange malaise. Her stomach was tight, she felt nauseous, and she felt sleepy all the time. She panicked and bought a test, and it confirmed her fears 2 lines. At this moment, she was seized by several feelings at once: joy, elation, because a new life was conceived in her, the fruit of their love, the desired child, but at the same time, wild fear. And what if my beloved would not be happy? Will not want to marry? What then? How would she face her parents? What will she tell them? She immediately called Alex at work, though she had never done so, and almost screamed. "Sorry to bother you, are you coming today? I need to see you urgently." The disturbed guy replied, "Wait, did something happen? Are you sick? Are you in trouble? Talk to me." "Alex, this is not a phone conversation." And the girl hung up. The guy dropped everything and arrived half an hour later to find his fiancée sobbing into her pillow. He didn't understand the thing. "Nancy, what's wrong with you? Yesterday everything was fine. Did I do something to offend you? Explain it to me." She silently handed him the test. The guy broke into a cold sweat, sat there in a stupor, stared at the 2 lines without blinking, and then said quietly, "Wow, so you've played the game. I thought I was being careful. How come?" "Geez, what's the time limit?" Nancy, sobbing, answered, "I don't know. I haven't been to the gynecologist yet, but I've been throwing up for 2 weeks. I thought you'd be happy and we'd get married, but you..." And she roared more than ever, realizing that Alex wasn't very happy about the news. The guy, stammering, answered. Well, I guess I'm glad. It's just all so sudden. I mean, we're only in our 20s. It's kind of early. Don't worry, kitten. And while we're at it, let's meet our parents and get married. Nancy exhaled, hanging happily around the guy's neck. Thank you for having me. I love you. We're going to be a real family soon. That's great. We will raise the baby together, go for walks with him. Alex nodded and agreed, but he was still in shock and frantically wondered how he was going to tell his parents at home. So he decided to cheat again. Nancy, let's just not tell anyone anything about the pregnancy yet, and we'll announce it to everyone at the show as a surprise. The girl suspected nothing and agreed. She herself had no idea how she would tell her parents yet, and if she and Alex did it together, even better. Nancy's parents were very happy about the invitation of future matchmakers. They were simple, naive people, so they picked up a lot of presents from the village, dressed up, started up their old 7, and drove to the appointed place. On the way, the car broke down. Robert did not get confused, took off his jacket, got under the hood, and began to fix the problem. Wendy was upset and wailed. What a nuisance. We'll be late. It's no good. They'll think we're not necessary. Robert, be careful there. You'll get your shirt dirty. It won't look good. But the man just grinned into his mustache. You women love to cause a panic. Let's go. Everything is ready. Come on, my swallow. Don't let me down, honey. Anything can happen on the road. We'll explain everything to them. They'll understand. They're not strangers. They'll understand the situation. The car, as if it had heard its owner's pleas, sneezed a couple of times and started up, and Wendy breathed a sigh of relief and crossed herself just in case. When Nancy's parents arrived, they were stunned. They had hoped to get acquainted at home, in a cozy atmosphere, so to speak, amicably, but it turned out to be the most chic restaurant in town. Robert didn't raise an eyebrow and started unloading bags of gifts from the trunk for the matchmakers, and the couple timidly entered the restaurant. They were simply amazed by its beauty and only had time to turn their heads left and right, looking at the paintings, the stucco, and the fanciful mosaics on the ceiling. Meanwhile, Alexa's parents and the young ones were assembled. Nina, despite her age, looked like a cover model. Long platinum hair, a wasp waist, an expensive velvet dress with an open back, and a lot of gold jewelry. Her face had lost the ability to smile and looked more like a frozen doll's mask because of her frequent facelifts and beauty injections. Anthony looked like a pompous turkey. He, too, was dressed, as always, in a suit of the latest fashion season, a shirt with gold cufflinks, and stood with his arms crossed, watching the prospective matchmakers who entered. A mustachioed, stocky little man in an old-fashioned brown suit and a shirt with a stained sleeve, and a woman as round as a barrel, in a ridiculously long, completely closed dress. No makeup, her hair simply tucked into a bun at the back of her head. Around her neck hung large red beads, like clusters of rowan berries. This rustic couple made the majors laugh. Nina muttered and remarked wryly, "Yeah, that's exactly how I imagined the milkmaid, just like that. Totally tasteless." And out loud, she said dryly, "Hello, kin. I take it you're Nancy's parents. My name is Nina, and this is Anthony, a businessman, deputy, and philanthropist in our city. We have our own network of gas stations in the region. And what do you gentlemen do?" Robert, out of the simplicity of his heart, did not see the catch at first, and rushed to hug and greet him simply. "Good afternoon to you, too. I'm Robert, and this is my wife, Wendy. Don't mind us, we're a little late. My swallow malfunctioned. I had to fix it, so I got a little dirty. We're simple country folk. I work all my life as a combine operator, and my wife is a milkmaid. We have a farm, a vegetable garden, everything is like people." Anthony remarked sneeringly, "I'm sorry, what people? In our social circle, until now, pardon me, there were no milkmaids and combine harvesters, all businessmen and high society. It's boring, really. Well, have a seat. Let's get to know each other better, if we can, of course." Wendy felt uncomfortable. Her mood suddenly disappeared. The dishes were all incomprehensible. She didn't even know which way to approach them. so she just drank her mineral water and kept quiet for the time being. But Nina wasn't silent. She was sarcastic with every word and tried to hurt the matchmakers. "Wendy, my dear, what an exquisite dress you have. Where did you get it? Must be Cardin's. I haven't seen it in the last collection." The frightened woman answered naively and honestly. "What are you talking about? It's not Cardin. I bought this in a regular store last year for the occasion, so it came in handy. Isn't it good?" The lady hummed. "It's awesome. I've been dreaming of this my whole life." Nancy was hurt that her mother-in-law was openly mocking her, but she kept silent. She only whispered to her fiancé, "Alex, what does your mother allow herself? Actually, it's offensive, don't you think?" But the guy just guffawed. "Don't worry about it. Mom is always in her repertoire. She doesn't give a damn. Just give her a reason to make a joke." Anthony kept up with his wife and asked Robert, "Well, since our kids are getting married, let's decide what restaurant we're going to have the wedding at. Where are they going to live? I'm looking for an apartment in a residential area for the newlyweds. And it's not expensive, $15 million. Do you think we can afford it together?" The man coughed. How much? How could we have that kind of money? Of course, we will give everything we have. We do not feel sorry for our daughter. But there is not even $1 million, and how much more? And what's all this show for? While they're young, let them rent, and then they'll save and we'll add to it. We can get a cheap apartment in the secondary market. I'll help do the repairs myself. If anything, I've got my hands in the right place. The businessman laughed and said Robert right to his face, "You know, you're used to living like this in your village and going to the outdoor toilet in the yard, and that's okay. But my son will not live in a second home." Robert took offense and even clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "It's actually not nice to boast about our wealth. We are simple, country people, and we don't hide it, but we live our lives according to our conscience. We work our asses off, and I am not ashamed of that. We are with all our heart. We bought presents for you. Smoked bacon, goat cheese my wife made at home, sausage, loaf baked by herself. Why didn't you put them on the table?" Nina stuck her nose in and couldn't help herself. "No need to embarrass yourself. It's an honorable public resting here. You should also bring a bottle of moonshine, in the best traditions of the village, so that it would be a complete still life." At this point, Nancy couldn't take it anymore and shouted out, "Why are you insulting my parents? Do you think that if we are from the countryside, then we cannot be considered people? When you eat bread, you should remember that my father threshes wheat, so that you have it in the store, and milk also does not come from thin air. You have to respect all work. How are we going to get along with you?" Nina hissed, "And you do not interfere at all. You upstart country girl, whoever told you that I'm going to get along with your collective farm family? I don't know where my son managed to dig you up on our heads." Nancy became unbearably hurt. She waited for her fiancé's support, for some kind of reaction, but there was none. Alex just sat quietly, his eyes downcast. It was unheard of. Then the girl shouted out to her mother-in-law, "And if I tell you now that your Alex will soon be a father and you a grandmother, then what? I'm pregnant, and Alex and I will get married. Darling, why are you numb? Tell the truth to your parents. It's not very masculine, is it?" The parents were shocked, and there was a pause at the table while everyone digested the news of the pregnancy. Nina's grimace of rage distorted, and she stopped controlling herself and yelled at the whole room, "You want to get married? That's the last thing I need. It's not going to happen. Your daughter got pregnant for the sake of the maternity capital. It's obvious to a fool. Do you think you've gone to heaven?" She spread her legs, and the capital registration is in her pocket. "But you're screwed. You don't know what wind blew this kid in. Maybe Alex had nothing to do with it." A scandal broke out. The parents yelled at each other, Nancy cried, and Alex behaved like a coward and hid his head in the sand. And then Nancy couldn't stand it. Her nerves finally gave out, and she decided to take extreme measures. The tear-stained girl went on stage. Still, the orchestra had stopped playing, and everyone was watching this wild spectacle. The girl asked for a microphone, exhaled, and through her sobs said to the whole audience, "I want everyone to hear. I loved this guy, Alex, not for money or his wealth, But sincerely and from my heart, yes, he got me pregnant. He promised he wouldn't betray, he wouldn't leave, and we get married. And now he sits there, afraid to say a word against his mother. Well, honey, I don't want your money, and neither do you. You can all calm down. I'm going to have and raise this child alone, all right. I'd rather he had no father than such a scoundrel and coward. Everyone in the hall applauded her, and Nancy came down and burst into tears again. Her father and mother ran up to her and began to comfort her. That's right, daughter, let's get out of here. We don't need such a cowardly son-in-law, and this family is not normal either. Go back home, we'll live without them. Damn them. Nancy looked at Alex one last time with contempt, all hoping that now he would come to his senses, tell everyone how much he loved her, would not give her to anyone and ask for forgiveness for the ugly behavior of his relatives. But no, the guy just sat there, eyes down like a frozen fish. Then Nancy approached him and whispered softly, "Farewell, traitor. How can you do this? I hate you." And the girl proudly walked out of the expensive restaurant with her parents. Nina was jubilant and didn't hide it. She poured herself a full flute of champagne and drained it in a gulp. We finally got rid of that village brat. What a blessing. Look at her, the cheeky one. She's trying to blackmail us with a baby. You've got the wrong people, you half-assed milkmaid. Alex objected languidly. It didn't turn out well. I really love Nancy. Except I got scared when she got pregnant. A little too soon, I guess. And now she hates me, and I hate myself too, for chickening out. Mom, why did you do this to them? What have they done to you? Nina surged. You're just as weak as you were. The village girl outsmarted you. She caught you on a bait. It's a well-known trick, and you've got your ears hanging out. She's dreaming of being a businessman's wife. Well, think about it. You need it? Just begin to make a career, the business went. So many good girls from decent families you looked at. Forget about her and be done with it. The businessman left the restaurant, and the audience and staff were still washing their bones for a long time. Yeah, we didn't think they were such bastards. And they pretended to be so noble. Philanthropists, founders of the foundation, a boorish breed. They humiliated and disgraced the girl for nothing. And their son is good, spineless, sits and chews snot. A shame, of course. Nancy hated Alex. Everything inside her was bubbling. Bastard, mama's boy. And I wanted to tie my life to him. And he did not even say a good word about me to my parents. And he does not care about our child. Well, fuck them all. I'll be fine. But I will not allow him to humiliate me and my family. The very next day, leaving everything behind, Nancy had to go to the village home. Father and mother did not nag, they understood. It was not easy for her, and how to live with such relatives. You wouldn't wish it on an enemy. Neighbors only at first, all the bones washed Nancy, because in the village to give birth without a husband is considered a disgrace, and is called brought in the hem. That's all you could hear from all over the place. Oh, you heard Nancy came home. She's a panty waist. And the town groom changed his mind about marrying her. They had a big fight right at the show. That's Wendy's shame. Robert's walking around, cursing the matchmakers for being bastards. Bad luck for the girl, that's for sure. The girl cried into her pillow at night, but she wasn't too mad at them, because in fact, they were right. She was a complete fool. She had jumped into bed with a rich city man, and he had wooed her and dumped her. But you can't rewind life. You can't get anything back, so Nancy just lived. Her belly was getting bigger and bigger, and she had terrible morning sickness. At home, she could not help my mother almost anything. Any odor, she was literally on the inside out, and mercilessly baked heartburn. The neighbors' grandmothers were very knowledgeable. It's going to be a boy, I'll tell you that. All the signs are there, and the belly is sharp, you'll see. So as not to sit on her parents' shoulders, Nancy made extra money by visiting neighbors and their acquaintances, giving injections, giving IVs, and taking blood pressure readings. It brought in some income, and they even managed to raise money for a used stroller, a crib, and basic necessities for the baby. Everything was just like people. On time, without any problems or complications. Nancy gave birth to a healthy, strong boy. She named her son James, after her beloved deceased grandfather. She believed to the last and naively hoped that Alex would come to his senses, and a miracle would happen. She would see his Jeep under the windows of the maternity hospital. But no, her father and mother picked her up in their old car. Dad even cried when he took her in his arms, stroked her nose, smiled, and whispered, "There you are, James. It's okay. We'll get through this. We'll grow up properly, without any rich freaks. Let's go home, daughter. Forget him. Don't tear your heart out. And don't look back. He won't come." Believe me, a real man would never leave a woman he loves in a situation. And since he did, get him out of your heart. There's your protector now. Life went on. The year flew by unnoticed, with the care of my son and the worries of the home. James stomped confidently, tapped his spoon, and ate his own porridge, and babbled his first words. The whole household looked after him dearly. Robert was riding his grandson, who laughed. Wendy was feeding him all kinds of yummy treats and telling him interesting stories of his childhood. The baby loved it very much. For Nancy, her beloved son became the meaning of life. She could not get enough of him. After a tragic separation from Alex in his personal life, Nancy gave up on his, deciding that will live for her son. And the wound in her soul was still not healing. She still often dreamed about Alex, and she could not forget him yet. One day, Nancy had to go to a scheduled appointment at the city clinic. As luck would have it, her father's swallow malfunctioned again, so she had to get there on her own. She packed up her son, put food, diapers, and a change of pants in the stroller just in case, and took the bus to the children's clinic. Everything went great. James got another vaccination and was examined. The baby was perfectly healthy. The line to the doctor was long, and now the young mother was walking with the stroller to the bus station, as she was running a little late and was afraid of not catching the bus. And here, as on sin, the wheel of the stroller fell off. So she tried to fix it herself, but of course nothing worked. Though what could you expect from a second-hand stroller? There was always something stuck and broken. And then, behind her, Nancy heard someone's unfamiliar voice. "Excuse me, woman, can I help you? I see the wheel has fallen off. Let me see if I can fix it." A young boy, very much like a tramp, was crouched beside the baby carriage, trying to put the wheel back in its grooves. And Nancy, taking her son in her arms for the time being, looked at him stealthily. Tall, no more than 30 years old, his hair dirty and long uncut, dressed as if he were someone else's shoulder, some sort of ridiculous jacket and frayed old jeans. In the meantime, the guy had done everything right, and the wheel was in its place. A delighted Nancy spluttered her arms. "Thank you very much. That's very helpful. My name is Nancy, and this is my son James. Here we went to the children's clinic for a checkup, and we're from the country." The guy answered quietly, "And my name is David. I don't live anywhere. I just hang around here and there. I'm so sick of everything. I come from an orphanage myself. My parents drank heavily, and the house I was supposed to have after they died burned down. Then I was foolishly sentenced to prison. My friends persuaded me to take the blame for someone else, saying that they wouldn't give me much when I was too young. And they told me how cool it was to be in prison. It was hell in there. I almost died there. I got out recently. Everywhere I ask for a job, I get rejected. I work at the market, help out for 3 kopecks, and go to load crates. But what kind of a life is it? Sleeping like a stray dog in the stairwells and alleyways? Sometimes I want to kill myself. All right, I'm rambling. Good luck, goodbye." For some reason, Nancy felt so sorry for David. You could see in his eyes that he was not a convict, not a murderer, not a rapist, but just a poor man with a broken fate. She suddenly, without knowing why, offered him a suggestion. "You know what? Why don't you come with us? There's always a need for workers in the village. I'm sure they'll take you to the farm. And you'll stay at our house for now. My parents are nice and kind. They won't turn you away. It's better than hanging out on the streets. And the weather's nasty. It's starting to rain and snow." David was very excited. "Is it really possible to stay with you? I don't mind. Thank you. I won't let you down. You won't have to apologize for me. Believe me, this is the first time I've met a stranger willing to help someone for nothing. On the way, Nancy was really worried how she would tell their parents about everything. Since he was a stranger and an ex-con, what if his father would not agree to help him? And even scolded herself a little for her rashness, trying to guess from his face and behavior what he was really like. But when she presented David and told him everything honestly, her father did not chase him away, nor did he scoff or scold his daughter, but responded, "You know what, David? I need to know, first of all, what you were in jail for. You know, I got a grandson growing up, 2 women in the house. I need to be calm." The guy held out his passport to the landlord, with a criminal record certificate in it, and said, "Here, it says it all. Article, car theft, but my friends were grown-ups who stole the cars, and I only changed the license plates, and when they got caught, they talked me, a fool of a minor, into taking over everything. They said they wouldn't give me much, so I didn't have to worry. And they brainwashed me with their stories about how cool it was to sit, and how they would respect me afterwards. I grew up without parents. I didn't understand a lot of things. And when I went to prison, I was horrified. It's a miracle I didn't break down, and I didn't do much time. But now I can't get a job. My house burned down. That's how I suffer." Robert only shook his head. "Yeah, I'm sure he's a dumbass. I just fucked up my whole life. Well, that's all right, it's in the past. I got an old outhouse in my backyard. I'll show you. It's really simple, a stove, a bed, a table, and a fridge. You can stay here for now, and tomorrow we'll go to the farm about the job. But I warn you, you'll have to work hard. It's dirty and smells good, you know, but the pay is good. If you don't get lazy and drink bitter, because our village men often sin with it." David was so excited. "Thank you, Robert. I'll help, I'll work, I won't let you down. I'm so tired of wandering around, I'm exhausted. And don't worry about drinking, I don't care for alcohol. I tried everything at the orphanage. I'm not hiding it. I'm not interested anymore." Wendy went out into the halls and shouted, "Dinner is ready, everybody to the table. Wash your hands and sit down. It'll get cold. And you, David, come in, don't be shy. We're simple people, so we're welcome to whatever we've got." David was eating with great appetite the hot potatoes with onions and butter, and the cutlets with the salad, which seemed to him to be the tastiest thing he had ever tasted in his life. After supper, Nancy led him into the heated bathhouse and gave him a clean towel and his father's clean pants and shirt and underwear. "Here, take this and wash all yours. I'll sew up the holes later. Good night, David." He thanked me profusely. "Thank you again, Nancy, for the bread and salt. I have never seen such a sincere family as yours." Now everyone is either angry or indifferent in the city, but it turns out that in village, such good people live. Thank you very much. On a regular spring bed with clean linens, and after the sauna, David fell asleep like a corpse. He had not experienced such bliss for a long time, and was eternally grateful to the people who had not been afraid that he was a convict and had sheltered him. David kept his promise. The very next day he got a job as a cattleman on a farm and began to work tirelessly. He wasn't lazy. He did all the foreman's errands. At first, of course, I was terribly tired. In the evening, I would fall off my feet, hardly making it to bed. But then I got used to it. I managed to help Robert around the house. He turned out to be a very good guy. But how much happiness David had when he got his first honestly earned salary. The first thing he did was to buy some presents for James and bring a whole bag of food from the country store to the family with the words, "Don't be shy, Wendy, it's from me to the table. I don't want to be a freeloader. I like it in the country. It's quiet here, it's peaceful, and the people are simpler. It turns out that I like animals very much. You come up to the cows with affection, scratch her side, she just closes her eyes with pleasure." The elderly woman nodded her head. "Well, it's good that you like it. Good for you, David, for taking the path of correction. Now you understand that you can't spend your hard-earned money on all sorts of things. I've been dealing with cows all my life. You're right, they're like people. Each of them has its own character. They feel warmth and affection at once. In general, I tell you, animals are better than many people, loyal and honest." Nancy became friends with the new tenant. They chatted a lot about this and that, She quietly talked about her failed romance, about Alex's betrayal, to which David responded seriously. But a fool he is. Alex is yours. I would never let a woman like you go. I would appreciate and cherish her. How can you leave your son and not communicate? James is so cool. Did you see the tower he and I built in the backyard yesterday? Even his truck goes through there. David loved to play with the baby, tossing him a ball, riding him on the baby's bicycle or stroller. The boy clung to him and sometimes even fell asleep in his arms. And the boy felt so good and warm inside at such moments. He genuinely admired the relationships within this family. Everyone loved, cared for, and supported each other. For him, who had never known the warmth of a home, it was so amazing that he wanted to create a warm and cozy world of his own family. 6 months later, one day Nancy had to run to a neighbor down the street to get an IV, and David had just returned from the farm and changed his clothes. He volunteered to walk with James and asked, "Can I go to the store with the baby? Can I buy some bread, kefir, and James something delicious? And we can go for a walk too." The little boy, hearing about the store, shouted happily, "I want a lollipop, and candy sticks, okay?" Nancy smiled and allowed it. "All right, but don't be too long, and be careful across the street." "I'll be quick. I'll put my neighbor's IV and be back." While Nancy was treating her neighbor and waiting for the solution to run out so she could remove the drip, a couple of hours passed. She was walking calmly back when she saw her mother flying toward her like a comet. She was terribly frightened, with no scarf, her hair disheveled, and screaming wildly, "Nancy, where's James? I thought maybe you took him?" Nancy was all floaty, and the ground was out from under her feet. "When I went to Grandma, David and James went to the store in the stroller. But they should have been back by now. Oh my God, what's wrong with my son? Aren't they home?" And Nancy lost consciousness. A terrible commotion began. A rumor swept through the village that Smirnov's grandson had disappeared. A convict had taken him for a walk and disappeared. Many of the villagers came out into the streets and began to look for the child. No one else's trouble here. The policemen told off Nancy and Robert. "You're really something else too. You're grown-ups. What an idea to shelter a stranger in your house. You never know what's on his mind. I know this contingent. Such people do not change. Now where to look for him? Tell me, please." Nancy screamed. "I don't believe it. David couldn't. He would never hurt James. I know where they were going. Everybody follow me." The policemen, Nancy and Robert, rushed after the young mother. She ran frantically around the store. "David and James were on their way here, so we'll have to search the neighborhood. Let's split up. I'll take the main road, and you guys take the streets in case we see anything." Well, they can't have disappeared without a trace, can they? Indeed, soon Robert was shouting to the whole village, "Everybody over here. Found it. Hurry up." Nancy ran as fast as she could, hoping James was found, but no. On the side of the road lay David unconscious with his head wounded. There was a lot of blood on the ground. Next to him was James' broken stroller, his sock, and lots of broken glass from the car. What a mess. There was also a huge piece of brick that must have hit the guy in the head. Nancy called for an ambulance, even though she knew how long the ambulance would take. She screamed, "David didn't do anything. He was protecting James. Someone took my son away in a car. Oh my God, who on earth would want my son? What if it was the gypsies? Or if they sell him for his organs? I've seen it all the time on TV. But wait, what if it has something to do with Alex? I don't think so. He's never been interested in his son. Where to look for James now? I'm going crazy. Daddy, help me. We have to get David to the paramedic station, and at least help him somehow before the ambulance arrives. He's going to die. His skull is fractured. I can barely feel his pulse." Nancy administered first aid to David, put him on an IV, gave him a shot of anti-shock, and the ambulance arrived and took him to the hospital. But he didn't get better. David slipped into a coma. He needed an urgent operation, but it cost, by village standards, a lot of money. Meanwhile, the police organized an interception plan, paying special attention to cars with broken glass. On one of the pieces of glass, they were able to identify the make of the car by its markings. Eventually, they found the car with the broken window on the way into town. And it turned out that James had been stolen by her ex-fiancé-in-law and her accomplices. When Nina was stopped by patrol at an intersection, the poor child was screaming raggedly in the front seat, strapped in. The boy was taken from her and placed in his mother's arms. Poor James was terribly frightened, crying, clinging to Nancy and hugging her tightly in his little arms. She kissed him frantically, tears pouring from her eyes. "Son, honey, thank God you've been found, alive and well. I almost lost my mind." "All right, calm down, my little one. Your mother is with you and won't give you away to anyone else." Nancy was very angry with Nina. How dare she do such a thing? Why would she steal her own grandson? Couldn't you talk to her like a human being? Ask her. I would have let them see each other. They were not strangers. God's crazy family. The police told her that the elderly woman was now facing jail time, especially since David had never recovered. And now it all depends on whether Nancy will testify against her and make a statement. That same evening, a motorcade of expensive cars drove up to the house. On the doorstep stood Anthony himself. Robert was terribly angry at the whole family and went to open the door with his fists clenched and an axe in his hand just in case. "What do you want? Why did you come here? Isn't kidnapping your grandson enough for you? You got something else in mind. Leave our family alone for God's sake. And from the child, from Nancy, let us all live in peace. You've disgraced us all yourself and kicked us out. Now why do you have a problem?" The businessman did not react at all to the boisterous speech of the owner of the house and was pale as a sheet. He asked quietly, "Please let me talk to Nancy, just a few minutes, and I'll be gone, I promise." Robert reluctantly let the uninvited guest in. The rich man entered the bedroom. A frightened Nancy sat in an armchair, holding James in her arms. She was clearly not happy about the unexpected visitor. Anthony swallowed and began a conversation. "Nancy, forgive my wife. Please take the application. I beg you. She's crazy. She did this out of desperation. I didn't know anything. I wouldn't let her. You see, Alex had an accident. He was driving drunk at night from the club. And now he's an invalid. He's in a wheelchair now. He's completely stunted, doesn't want to live, drinks, and blames us for all his misfortunes. So Nina decided to steal her grandson to give Alex an incentive to live. She thought that when she saw her son, she would think of something better. She can't go to jail. Her blood pressure is too high. She won't survive there. I'm willing to pay any money. Just take the statement. There's nothing wrong with the boy. Do you want me to get down on my knees? Forgive her." Nancy objected. "Why do you measure everything by money? What about David? Your wife and her thugs almost killed a man. He was only trying to protect my child. He's dying. He's in a coma. He needs an operation now. It costs a fabulous amount of money. How can we deal with it? Or is the life of a poor tramp not worth a penny by your standards?" The businessman promised. "I'll pay for David's surgery tomorrow. It will be done by the most renowned luminaries of surgery." "You're right about everything. You can't do that. It's not human, but you can't get it back." The woman sighed. "Okay, I'll take the application if you save David. And I'm even willing to come to your house to show Alexa's son. But only in my presence. It's a deal." The businessman kept his promise, and David had a very complicated surgery. The boy stayed in the hospital for a long time and rehabilitated. Nancy visited him often with James, cheered him up. They talked a lot. She taught him everything all over again. How to eat, talk, walk, smile. During this time, the couple became very close. David held Nancy's hands, kissing each finger and whispering, "I love you so much. You are my guardian angel. You came into my life so suddenly and turned my world upside down. James is like a son to me. I can no longer imagine myself apart from you. Promise me that we will always be together. That's all I dream about. What I went through in prison was a cruel but effective lesson. I will never break the law again. Don't worry. I'll be a better husband and father, so you can be proud of me." Nancy smiled, ruffled his hair gently, and said, "I promise. I can't imagine my world without you either. My son chose you himself, and you can't cheat a child. He won't intuitively go to a bad person." When David recovered, the couple decided to get married. The wedding was celebrated by the whole village, amicably and cheerfully, with dancing and accordion. The villagers respected David when they learned that he had saved the baby at the cost of his life, and they began to treat him well. The chairman gave him a job as a combine harvester, and Nancy as a paramedic, because she had long been, in fact, helping people to cope with illnesses. Robert couldn't be pleased with his son-in-law. David was very industrious and kind. His father saw that his daughter was glowing with happiness, and James wouldn't get away from David, and even began to say to him, "Daddy." One evening the phone rang. Nancy heard Alex's voice, and she shuddered inside. "Hello, it's Alex. Dad said you'd let me see my son. Please bring him back. I just want to hold him and play with him. I'm a father, after all." A moot point, thought Nancy, but answered aloud. "I'm used to keeping promises, unlike some people. James and I will be there tomorrow after work. You wait, but not without my presence. After your mother's stunt, there's no way I'm leaving my son unsupervised." Alex got very excited. "Okay, whatever you say. I agree. Come, I'll be very much looking forward to it." Robert and David personally took Nancy with James, as they were very afraid that Nina wouldn't do something crazy again. When Nancy and her son entered Alex's bedroom, she gasped. In front of her in the wheelchair sat a helpless, drained man with droopy eyes and sunken cheeks. He was nothing like the gaudy, handsome man she had once loved so much. Vanya squinted frightened at the stranger and clung to his mother. For a couple of minutes, Nancy and Alex just stayed silent and looked at each other without blinking. Each thought and remembered his own things. Nancy started first. "Hello, Alex. I see you're not doing so well. I'm sorry to hear that. Here, as promised, I brought you to show you your son. I want you to meet James." Alex admired the chubby, rosy-cheeked little boy in the striped overalls. The boy was his, Alex's, copy. The same span of eyebrows, the look from under his forehead, and the crooked nose. Then he beckoned him to him. "Hello, James. Come to Papa. Well, I'm Alex, your daddy. And you're my son. Do you understand me?" The baby suddenly bounced away from him, cried, and crawled into his mother's arms. He babbled. "It's not Daddy. I don't want to. No. Mom, let's go home." David behind the wall couldn't find his place. He was insanely jealous of Nancy's ex-fiancé, and he was worried about whether the old feelings between them would flare up. When he heard the baby crying, he couldn't stand it and burst into the bedroom. "Nancy, is everything all right? He's not hurting you. How are you, James?" He held out his hands, and the baby immediately went to David. His tears dried up. The baby clung to him trustingly and babbled. "That's my daddy. He's a good one. Let's go home. I don't want to be here." Nancy spread her hands and said to Alex, "You see, I can't make my son love you. I'm sorry. You're a stranger to him. He doesn't know you, and he's afraid of you. What can I do? By the way, meet David, my husband." "Well, Alex, we're going home, I guess. There's no point in continuing these meetings. All the best, get well. It's too late for you to remember that you have a son, don't you think?" When everyone left, Alex wasn't just crying. He was screaming at the whole house, beating the wall with his fists until they bled, and cursing himself. "What an idiot I am. I'm an idiot. I missed out on a woman like that. And my son, he's running away from me, and he's running to another man's man. What have I done? Why didn't I stop the obscurantism of my mother at the restaurant? Why didn't I defend Nancy and her family's honor? Why didn't I betray her? Who needed me now, a worthless invalid? And Nancy loved me so much. Now we would live as a normal family, raise a son." Only now Alex realized that he had lost his happiness, his love, and was left at the bottom of the trough. Besides, he was also infirm. But things were going well for Nancy. David really enveloped her and James in such care, such love, that she now even remembered how she had suffered with the selfish Alex, and thought that she was alone for life. At home in the village near her parents, she was surprisingly calm and good. In the big and foreign city, she just suffocated. David was terribly proud to be the owner and to have such a strong family. And Nancy, hugging her husband at night, thanked the universe every time for once opening her eyes to Alex and setting them apart. Otherwise, she would never have met David, and he was her soulmate. She was sure of it now. Now the woman knew for sure that all things work out for the best.